Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much once again for joining us today. I'm personally very excited about our today's session, which is about Toronto's business landscape and OINP entrepreneur stream. Uh, so first of all, let me thank all of you for joining us today, and let me also thank our two distinguished speakers. Excited to introduce Jagdish Yadav. Jagdish is basically will talk about what this great city of Toronto has to offer. Dr. Yadav is representing today City of Toronto. He works as an advisor at the city and focuses on post-secondary education, economic development, and workforce development. He facilitates inter-institutional communication and collaboration. He facilitates dialogue among entrepreneurs, universities, colleges to promote innovation and entrepreneur activities. Uh, his educational background is equally impressive. He has done his PhD from University of Edinburgh, United Kingdom. He has also done a master's in biotechnology from UFT and another master's from India. So he is the person who would explain everything about city of Toronto, like what does this great city offer for the new immigrants. Jagdish, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being here. We were receiving a lot of requests from all the members, all the participants to have this session, and I really thank you very much for being here. So during the first half of the session, approximately 1 hour, Jagdish will be the presenter and speaker about the topic, and the second half for 1 hour, Al Parsai, he will talk about OINP entrepreneur streams. Now, Al, all of you pretty much know him very, very well, but it's again always an honor for me to introduce him. Al Parsai is a famous immigration practitioner. He is an RCIC who also represents client at IRB. He is an LLM from the prestigious Osgood Hall Law School. His book, 88 Tips on Immigration to Canada, has been Amazon's bestseller for the last several years. He's an excellent trainer and educationist. He is adjunct professor at Queen's Law School, where he teaches new immigration consultants. He's professor at Ashton College. He is co-founder of Global School of Corporate Excellence, and he is also founder of the Immigration Consultants Network, the network that basically brings all these sessions for you under the umbrella of Global School of Corporate Excellence. So thank you very much, everyone, once again. And before now, I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Yadav to please start the presentation.
Thank you. I asked for a kind and impressive introduction. And thanks for the opportunity to speak about my favorite place, the city of Toronto. One thing I just want to point out that you said everything about Toronto, but sorry, I don't know everything about Toronto. Very little I know about Toronto, and Toronto is so big and so diverse and so many activities here. But anyway, thank you. I will try to give a brief snapshot of about Toronto and its businesses and what can be done, what cannot be done, what is in priority, and all that stuff. And for L, I just want somebody was speaking to me yesterday and talked about L, and I said, oh, he has written a book about 84 tips. Now I correct myself, it is not 84, but it's 88. Sorry all about that. uh, anyway, so as I said, I'm Jagdish Yadav. I work with the City of Toronto and particularly in the economic development and culture division of the City of Toronto. I also work, interact basically with a lot of people outside of City of Toronto, with the neighboring municipalities, Peel region, Mississauga, Brampton, Vaughan. So there's kind of a lot of collaboration with them also. So sometimes Toronto region we present that as one unit. And so I'll speak about Toronto more or less, but also touch upon Toronto region, because that gives you a better idea of what are the the scope of businesses and the interplay between them and the collaborations you can have if you're looking for businesses. So I'll touch upon a little bit about Toronto region also. In this presentation, uh, can I have that play mode, please? Yeah, basically I'll talk about four sides of it. Basically, first, give you an idea about the Toronto, the city of Toronto, geographical region, and some facts and figures about that. Then talk briefly about Toronto region, and then give you a picture of the key economic sectors that are important in the city of Toronto, and then some business supports and incentives, kind of business uh, facilitators in the city of Toronto that any entrepreneur or a business person should be aware of and can take advantage of those things. So let's talk about Toronto first. Next slide, please. Okay, as you know, the Toronto, city of Toronto is the largest city in Canada and fourth largest city in North America. Pretty big, huge. Next slide. Now, if you look at in this table, you have the city of Toronto and the Toronto region. Geographically, city of Toronto is not that big if you compare the Toronto region, but a lot of population is concentrated here. So now the city of Toronto is over 3 million people, and roughly half of the population of the Toronto region lives in city of Toronto. Slightly higher rate of unemployment in city of Toronto when you compare it with the Toronto region. The GDP, city of Toronto GDP is over $170 billion, but Toronto region is 369. Sometimes these figures change depending on where from you got these figures, but generally in the range is fine, 369 to 390, that kind of figures. And also, the residents of city of Toronto are slightly poorer than the residents of Toronto region overall. Next slide. Next slide. Now, as you see, fourth largest city in North America, and roughly Canada's one-fourth population lives in Toronto. Sorry, lives within 160 kilometers or 100 miles of around the city of Toronto. We speak about more than 190 languages in different parts of Toronto. More than half of this population identify themselves as visible minorities, and they are first generation immigrants. And there are about 44%, as you see, their first language is other than English or French, which are the official languages for Canada. Next, please. Now, few figures or facts about Toronto. Toronto's is huge, as I indicated. About 11% GDP of Canada comes from Toronto. And their Toronto businesses export more than $70 billion. And the retail sales are 62 billion. These figures are quite old actually, but now there must be an increase of it. If you look at some of the key significant factors about Toronto, the financial sector is very, very strong, the third largest financial services sector in Toronto, because of the presence of the major financial institutions, like 6 of the largest banks in Canada. They have their 5 of them have headquarters in the city of Toronto. A lot of this insurance, uh, pension funds, those kind of financial companies, they have their headquarters in Toronto. Toronto is a competitive place to do business because there are cost advantages, there are talent advantages, their diversity. There are many factors that make Toronto as a competitive place to do business. If you talk about the workforce here, the talent available here, over 80,000 businesses are in City of Toronto, and we have highly skilled workforce. That's that's a big advantage for Toronto, and the Toronto's residents are highly educated as well. Now, if you look at the 64% of Toronto's residents between the age of 25 and 64, they have post-secondary education. That's the highest in any of the countries in OECD. Next. Education-wise, it's the hub, the largest center of education in Canada. We have four public universities here: University of Toronto, York University, Toronto Metropolitan University, and OCAD University. And there's a private university, the Northeastern University, which is expanding pretty fast in Toronto. And they came in 2016. The first time they started with three programs. I think they are now having more than five programs out and having, I think, over 1,000 students. Um, we have a lot of four uh, uh, public colleges, community colleges, we call them. And there are a number of private career colleges and language schools. So it's the education hub, all kinds of skills, trainings available in this place. So there is something for every taste. And the universities and colleges, they produce a lot of as highly educated, skilled people every year. The location is also uh, critical for any business. And if you look, the location of Toronto is so favorable that uh, you can connect with the not only the Toronto region, but you can have access to a big chunk of population in US within 90 minutes of drive. And those places are well connected. So you have a huge market around you. Toronto is well connected. We have two airports here, the Pearson International Airport and Billy Bishop and the city airport. They connect throughout the world, direct flights to many countries. Transportation, we have the highways, we have the railway connectivity, the port, and the air connection. So Toronto is really well connected to this place. So next, please. Another thing which many of us do not know until you really are into the business or you are into any position like I am, work with the cities, different departments. Toronto has got a very alive and very friendly and innovative ecosystem here. There's a lot of funding flow into that. Uh, when I talk about the innovation ecosystem, that means we have the educational institutions from where a lot of research takes place, new technologies and uh, other things they come out of these institutions. And there are a lot of incubators, accelerators, and co-working spaces, which can be approached and accessed for developing your own business ideas. So very unique place, and it's mostly that is concentrated within downtown area, but the unique and big opportunity for people who want to start a business. We have all kinds of companies, like I indicated, that more than 80,000 businesses are in Toronto, small and big, but mostly the SMEs. They are in operation in Toronto. But we also have the big ones, the giants, the Googles, the IBM, Cisco. They have their presence in Toronto. Toronto is also a growing city, and often you must have read this line in the newspapers or in TV or radio broadcast that Toronto has so many cranes. A lot of construction activity actually is going on. And at one point of time, the Toronto has those big cranes, the construction cranes, they were more than the combined number of city of New York, San Francisco, Chicago. So a lot of activities happening here, and the population growth is also there. You know, we get a lot of immigrants in Toronto. Next, please. Now, as you're talking about the businesses, and mostly they are SMEs, now pretty unique feature here. You know, this one, that Toronto's population is diverse. We all know. I think the most diverse city in the world, and this diverse population, they are into employment. They do all kinds of activities. But if you look at the entrepreneurship, this chart gives an idea of how the entrepreneurs are spread out. You know, I think it's more or less uh, copy the population pattern, except I think the First Nations, the indigenous people, they are about 1% in the population of Toronto, but there is a zero presence of entrepreneurship. I'm sure some of them they have the businesses, but not. I don't think they are represented proportionately in the ownership of enterprises. But other than that, you know, the different segments of population they are into businesses, entrepreneurship. In the uh, next slide, please. Yeah, I now this chart. I don't know how can this is too small probably, but this chart shows the there's classification of industry. You know, there's NAICS, the North American Industry Classification System, and they basically classify business establishments for the purpose of collecting, analyzing, and publishing statistical data. And this classification system, you know, classifies based on the type of economic activity. Uh, and if you look at the type of economic activities, the different type of activities like manufacturing, real estate, education, different kinds of the activities are there. And this chart shows the relative contribution to the GDP for these different industry classes. The biggest one is, of course, the finance. Finance is the biggest contribution to the GDP, followed by real estate, and so on. So that gives you an idea about the contribution of different NICS categories to the GDP of Toronto. Next, please. Yes, next, please. Next slide. This also gives an idea about the Toronto's, you know, no, the previous, the previous slide, please. Before that, yeah, this one. And these are another way of showing you uh, the big industries, the top big industries in Toronto. As I said, finance, real estate, technology has become very important in the last decade or so. And so these are other industries which are present in Toronto, thriving, growing, and contributing in a big way. Next slide. Now I'll talk about the Toronto region a little bit. So that was City of Toronto. Toronto region that consists of City of Toronto and other locations, the Peel region, the Halton region, York, and Chatham region. So that is the Toronto region. And what's happening? There's a deliberate attempt to work to collaborate among the different municipalities here, and so that they present a big picture. When you talk about the Toronto region, the impact is huge around the world. There's an agency called Toronto Global. Many of you must have heard of it. That agency works for the Toronto region, particularly to outside of this, to outside of Canada. Their main focus is to bring businesses, to attract businesses, attract finance to this region. Uh, Next, please. As next slide. Okay. So these are some of the facts about Toronto region. And again, as the city of Toronto, the population is diverse here. In the city of Toronto, the population is about more than half, about 52% of, about 51% actually. Uh, Residents are born outside of Toronto, but in Toronto region it's a little bit less, or 34%. Um, Now the influx, like we said, population is growing pretty fast in this region. More than 100,000 new immigrants every year, almost a third of Canada's total immigration. They come and settle in Toronto region. Uh, the other reason is, again, a lot of languages, different ethnic groups. Again, half of the population, they say they are visible minorities. And another thing which is kind of nowadays quite in news is about the diversity. If we talk about the diversity, LGBTQ population is pretty high here and well recognized, and diverse kind of activities take place in this region. Next, please. This gives you an idea about uh, some other facts about Toronto region. Total population of Canada is 40 million. Of that, about 20% that of that population lives in Toronto region. So it's highly kind of densely populated area in comparison to rest of Canada. The labor force, combined labor force is quite huge, about 6.5 million. And this is one of the largest and fastest growing metropolitan regions in North America. And the estimate is that by 2051, the population of this region is projected to grow to over 10 million people. So pretty fast growth. Next, please. This is again some estimates about the population growth in Toronto as compared to other cities, the big cities in Canada, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and Ottawa get new. The rate of growth is faster in Toronto region than in other regions of Canada. Next, please. Some other facts and figures about uh, Toronto region. You can see it. I mean, we can share the presentation with everyone, so you can see the figures here about different areas and all that stuff. So I don't have to read it. Um, Now, just the last point, the 23 cranes. Uh, Again, the construction activity is happening not in just the city of Toronto, but in all the areas of Toronto region. So that's something to keep in mind. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, look at the relative GDP contribution. And as we said, Toronto represents 20% of Toronto's Canada's GDP. Or such a huge contribution in Canada is to of the Toronto region to Canadian economy. So the opportunities are also available here. Next. Uh, as I mentioned about Toronto Global, that agency, which mainly focuses on bringing the foreign direct investment, attracting the businesses to Toronto region. And if you look at this, uh, a big chunk of the foreign direct investment that comes to Toronto region in comparison to other places. Next. This gives you an idea about the market access. As I mentioned briefly there, Toronto and all around, if you look at this, within 400 kilometers, 800 kilometers, 700, 1200 kilometers, there is there's a huge population that is connected to the center in Canada and in US. So you can see that within 500 miles, 130 million people you can access to. And that's so 60% of global economy is accessible by daily non-stop flights from Toronto. So the market access is huge, pretty advantageous for the businesses here. Next. Now that was about Toronto region, and now I'll touch upon briefly on the key economic sectors in Toronto, the city of Toronto, and I don't have figures uh, for the Toronto region for different sectors, but that would be more or less kind of proportionate to the city of Toronto. And so what happens in the city of Toronto, uh, in the economic development and culture division, some sectors they have been identified by the city, which it thinks that they're important for the city's economy, um, creating jobs, contribution to the finances and all that stuff. And in city, what happens in the uh, and this is unique, I think, for Toronto, at least in Canada, a sector-based approach to economic development. And for each sector, there is a specialist uh, who helps in that sector, the stakeholders in that sector. For example, I'm the education sector specialist in the city of Toronto. So I'm a kind of interface between the educational institutions, educational programs with the city's economy, the businesses, entrepreneurs, investors, and all that kind of thing. So we try to help each other. We try to help our educational institutions to grow, help their activities, help them in meeting their targets, and the same and connecting them with the businesses. Same thing, the businesses are there. We call them our stakeholders. They reach to us and they ask for certain things. They want to be connected with educational institutions, with the investors, all that. So we try to kind of connect each other and facilitate uh, the achievement of common goals. So each sector specialist works individually, and at the same time, we work in teams. So the different sector specialists, they sometimes meet each other, and and often there is overlap of activities. So we work together as a team. Also, we work as individuals. So here I'll just go through the key sectors which are important and which are recognized by the city of Toronto. The creative technology is one, of which of late in the I think last uh, couple of years is growing very fast. The creative technologies, video game production is one of the big ones that is growing very very fast, and we have the talent for that. Uh, so you, a lot of us, we all play games, and a lot of students in our educational institutions, they directly go there, they work there. So it creates a lot of employment, also contributes to the local economy in a big way. Next one is fashion and apparel. It's a relatively old sector. I mean, for many years, there is a specialist for it. Toronto is big in this area, and main activities like in this table, you can see clothing retail, clothing manufacturing, clothing wholesalers, textile mills and products. So those kind of main activities. And some of the big players here, Canada Goose, Joe Frass, Roots, they're all based in here. Next one, design. We have a design sector specialist. And you can see here, it's again a big one, employs about 25,000 designers uh, in Toronto, which collectively earn about $2.5 billion as annual wages. This is a pretty significant sector. And next one, education, which is my favorite one. And so this is the largest hub, and for education, Toronto. We have 1,400 educational establishments, uh, employs more than 100,000 people. The annual wage is 7.2, but the actual contribution to the GDP is over $15 billion from the education sector to Toronto's economy. It's huge. And we have two school boards here. One is public Toronto District School Board and Toronto Catholic District School Boards, two big boards, school boards having, I think in total, more than 800 schools, elementary and secondary schools. We have universities, the big ones, public and private, and you probably all of you know that University of Toronto is the biggest one and the most research intensive university in the world. Generally around, it ranks 20, 21, 22, that kind of 19, in the among the top educational institutions in the world. So pretty high ranking. A lot of research takes place, cutting edge research takes place. A lot of startups are there in these universities and colleges. So the huge one. Then we have all kinds of disciplines and academic programs in them. So that's a big one. Film is another big sector. You must have recently heard of the TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival. And we have a strong team, a film commissioner, and who works for the film sector. And the contribution is more than 2.5 billion. And in fact, the Toronto is getting the name Hollywood North, because a lot of activities, even some of the producers from outside of India, outside of Canada, but even Hollywood and other countries, they come here to produce their films. Sorry about India, because a lot of Bollywood producers, they come here and they make films here. That's why. And recently, I actually spoke to somebody, and that's why that name came up. Next one. Financial, the biggest contributor to the Toronto's economy, over 200,000 people work in this sector in Toronto. As I said, a lot of the banks, the insurance companies, pension funds, they have their headquarters here. We have the Toronto Exchange, that is in Toronto. So big contribution. There's the unit called Toronto Financial Services, and if you want to work on this, you can connect. In fact, for all these sectors, you can connect to the expert in that sector. They are listed on the City of Toronto's website. You approach them for any information or for any help, and they're pretty good in responding back pretty fast and trying to help in whatever way you want their help. Next one, green. That is the emerging sector, and there is still the city and different levels of government, even the private players, they're struggling to define the green sector. So it's evolving sector. The employment is going up and up. I will strongly recommend you to pay special attention to this sector and the opportunities available there. You'll see a lot of opportunities in the coming years, not just to do your own business, but also in terms of employment. A lot of employment will be created. I'll talk a little bit about this later on. So this is a sector I think which will grow very fast, and and this will create new kind of jobs. Some of the jobs which are not even available now. The titles are not even available now. You'll see those will be coming. As, as you know, with the technology, what's happening? Some of the jobs which were there traditionally, they're disappearing. And particularly with AI, many of these jobs in the coming years will be no more, and new kind of jobs requiring new kind of skills will be there in the coming years. And I think green sector or green employment, green technologies will be one of them. So we have very one dynamic green specialist, and you can always connect to this first person um, for to know more about the green sector. Next one, food and beverage, another big one, and we have a wonderful expert on food and beverage working for I think more than 20 years in this sector. Knows very well the sector, the different the players in the food sector, types of products, and what should be done to formulate and grow a business in food sector. So please connect with this person. And here is a snapshot of the kind of different activities and some of the key players in food sector. Next, life sciences, another big sector, huge one, and a lot of opportunities. So for immigrants who are into medical type of backgrounds, and if they are not finding opportunities in their own in the field they have the expertise, uh, so they have an opportunity here in kind of related health fields here. So some of the big players are here, I mean, are listed here. But again, we have a dynamic life sciences person who is very well connected with the life science ecosystem here, and so that person can provide guidance. But there is a huge opportunity here, and it's growing very fast. A lot of emphasis from various levels of the government on this, particularly after the COVID situation. And so take care of, I'm taking note of this. Next, music. Those who are the music lovers, they have the opportunity here. It's again growing, pretty popular uh, sector. And so there's some information here. Next one, technology. Again, big one, growing very fast in the last 10 years or so. Toronto has become the hub in North America, third largest uh, technology hub in North America, and of course the largest in Canada. Big players are there. A lot of talent is available on tech side. A lot of work is being taking place in different academic institutions and by the private players. So we have the talent, we have the opportunity, we have the accelerators and incubators I talked about, co-working spaces. Most of them, they're focused on the tech kind of startups, helping them to grow. Next one, tourism, the traditional sector, but very important. During COVID time, there was kind of some sort of disruption for the tourism sector, but a lot of people, they come to Toronto uh, and they are here, and tourism related activities, there are a lot of it. So great opportunities for people who have that kind of interest and background and experience. And you can connect with the right person in the city of Toronto to get the help there to know more about it. Thank you. So these were some of the key sectors which are growing very fast and which contribute in a big way to the city of Toronto's, whether it's the term, employment or setting of enterprises. Now, I'll talk. I'll take a few minutes just to talk about so about the business incentives and supports. Why should you be in Toronto, and or for that reason in Toronto region? So there are some supporting things happening, or some programs and activities are there, and some factors are there which are helpful for you. For example, if you look at the corporate tax rates, Toronto region has got relatively low corporate taxes in comparison to other cities, many of the other cities in North America. Cost competitiveness of labor costs are a little bit lower than the labor costs in US particularly. So there's a competitive edge here. The employer cost benefits, one of the key point I'll make it is about the health costs. So in Canada, we have the universal health system. So that puts less cost on the employers or the business owners. A lot of government incentives are available from different levels of the government. So you can look into them and take advantage of them. Next one. Here, this chart shows relative the corporate income tax rates, and in Ontario, and pretty much is the same for Toronto region. So we have less corporate tax rate than in many cities in US. Next one. This chart shows, and most of the immigrant consultants and experts, they probably know about it, that we have huge number of international students coming to this region. I mean, Toronto gets, I think, about a quarter of the international students every year, and that's a huge contribution to them. And the purpose of showing this slide is basically you see the talent pool that is being created uh, with the international students who are here. So so from that perspective, it's very important. Next slide. This shows the kind of about the location of campuses of different universities and colleges in Toronto region, and many of them they're concentrated within Toronto, and in Toronto also within the downtown area. So, but accessible, there are other institutions all around in Toronto region. About 500,000 students, they're there in these institutions. Next one. Some of the support systems, like the number of financial assistance programs, which provide grants and loans to different businesses, to start the business, to grow your business. And so this is not the complete list, but there are lots of other programs. In each category, for example, business grants, incentives, and rebates, if you look at that, you'll find a big list of them. So you can take advantage of those support systems available. Next one, particularly for the new businesses. Next slide. Next slide, guys.
Jackie, is it this one? Policies
No,
and
no,
initiatives.
the previous one, yeah,
Previous
just
one.
before
Okay.
that, yeah.
Is that support for new business?
Support for new businesses, yeah. So it's the same as for the existing businesses, but new businesses particularly they focus on the new startups. So if you have an idea about a business, you can take help of these different programs. There are people, mentors, the other kind of people, experts. They will help you to in growing your idea and set up a business. So they are there. There are offices in Toronto and different locations. I think they're all municipalities. They have these offices to support these businesses. So connect with them directly for good guidance and for good support. Next one. Yeah, so this is the one actually I wanted to talk about a little bit on the green sector side. So probably lots of you know that uh, the the government of Canada, the province, the different cities, they have this huge target, the climate, to achieve the climate goals. So, for example, the city of Toronto, it has got a net zero strategy targets that have to be completed by 2040 or 2050. Now, the goals are ambitious, and there are a lot of activities for each goal, for each target. That means uh, there's a lot of support financially. There's financial programs which provide help for those activities, so you can take advantage of that. You can also look into the from employment point of view. So these new programs, for example, I give an example of say uh, heating and cooling system in our buildings. So by 2040 or 2050, all these city buildings, they will have to be converted. The heating will have to be converted on electric heaters, and all gas-based uh, the furnaces and all to uh, activities will be finished. The electric vehicles will come into picture. So if you replace the gas-based, for example, say a furnace for heating with electric system totally, you will need lots of people who can work for that kind of electric devices. So there's an opportunity here. Look into those kind of opportunities. If you are looking for employment, learn those skills, and that will help you in getting a good job. There is an also opportunity for businesses to produce those products. So details you can find at the website of City of Toronto or at different levels of the government. Just have a look at that, and there's huge opportunity there. There's are opportunities in different sectors, but this particularly one, I work on some programs in forecasting the demand of workforce and the different products in some of these subsectors. And that's why it's growing area and the opportunity will be huge in that. Next slide and the last one. Uh, if you look at just random kind of, I googled something randomly, and you see the fastest growing industries in Canada, and they're based on revenue side. So not necessarily the sectors I talked about, they are here, but these are the activities. So something interesting to look at and take your own decision on moving forward. So that's an brief about the Toronto region, the different types of sectors, the economic activities, the business incentives, those kind of things. I hope you got a little bit out of it, but for more details, you're always welcome to connect with us. Thank you.
Dr. Yadav, thank you very much. So for everyone, if you have any questions, so please, you can write your question in the Q&A section that you can access from the bottom right corner of the window. So please write your question and Dr. Yadav will be happy to answer. So in the meantime, I have one question. So you mentioned like when you were talking about various sectors that there are dedicated person who manages that portfolio. So I assume that we can find the contact details on the City of Toronto's website, or there is one uh, specific department where new entrants can go. So how does it logistically work?
So no, thanks. As the best thing is if you just type industry sector support and Google it in City of Toronto, will come up with that list. You can also now you have my email. You can also write an email if you're not finding anyone. I can forward that email to the right person. And City of Toronto, you can connect with anyone, and they should be able. Even the 311 service should be able to provide their contact. I'm not sure about that, but I think they can definitely guide you.
Okay.
But it's publicly available, that information.
That's perfect. So we have one question. I believe you already answered that. The question is, can we reach out to the Economic Development Department of the City of Toronto? If so, what type of support can new business accept to receive directly from your department? So I believe you pretty much answered that question already. Next question is, Samira is asking, will we get access to the slides afterwards? Yes, you will have access to the slides and recording through ICN. I will send you the link for that. Then again, the next question is also about the slides. We have another question about, can we have information on business angel investor to approach industry sector?
So can you repeat a little bit disconnection?
Question is, can we have information on business incubators and angel investors to approach industry sector? So I believe asked, like, if we have any list of incubators or angel investors according to the type of the industry, if we maintain such list.
Yes, we have over 70 incubators and accelerators in Toronto, and they are, most of them, they are in the educational institutions. For example, University of Toronto or colleges, they're based there, and some of them are in private side also. And the list is available. If you look at the Startup Toronto, I think that it should have, or Toronto Entrepreneurship Services. Those two sites should be able to give the list of it. And otherwise, you can always contact us, or mostly the Toronto Entrepreneurship Services. So I think they should be able to give that idea. If not, please connect with me, and
Sure,
I'll
absolutely.
direct to the issuers.
So we have next question that uh, startup visa or new business migrating uh, go to what resources in creating business profile for OINP. So I assume the question is that for the startup visa applicants or the people in the business, so what resources can you provide uh, in OINP profiles? I believe that's what they're trying to
So
ask.
I think there is some disconnection here with the internet, but I think a startup visa, there are uh, i- in that startup visa, that stream, they've identified as some of the institutions. Many of them are in Toronto. For example, Toronto Business Accelerator, and so we have some connections there. But you can directly reach out to them for that. And if you want to develop your idea a little bit further on, and frame your ideas and your program in a format which helps you in getting, support from those identified institutions, then definitely we can help. Our in Toronto Entrepreneurship Services, they will help you in framing those ideas into a good proposal, I would say. And that might be helpful, if I understand the question correctly.
Thank you. So the next question is, does City of Toronto business services available to people living outside, say in Mississauga?
So Mississauga will have, I presume, will have its own entrepreneurship services department, and they will have the people there who can support, uh, who can provide the same support. I think, because the funding comes from the province or the feds, and that goes to all the municipalities. It's not just City of Toronto. So they will have those supports, and I know they have, and so you can directly reach out to them.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next question is there a reason why Ontario does not provide subsidized education for Ontario residents, similar to Quebec? Will it encourage workforce from within Ontario rather than depending on the immigrant population?
So subsidized education for the residents here or for the international students? What? I missed
For the
that.
Ontario residents. So the question is why there is no subsidized education for Ontario residents.
Oh, well, that's a tough question for me. I think I am not in position to comment on that.
Absolutely.
Uh, but I don't know. Actually, it should be. I think there are some bridging programs which new immigrants can take advantage of, and the fee is, I don't know, the fees covered by those new the bridging programs, or it is subsidized. But one thing I'll only today this morning I had a meeting or a presentation from somebody, the ISED, the Innovations Canada, what's the full form? I don't know. And they have this program for upskilling, and they're providing grants for upskilling for the residents. So that covers the new immigrants. And so those grants can be used to upskill your uh, your skills in the areas which are in demand. So it's worth looking into those grants. And there might be some other programs also. Probably Al would know more about it. And I'll also look into it and send those details if I come across to them. But definitely, Upskill Canada is a program is worth looking at. Only this morning I came to know of it.
Thank you very much. We have few more questions, but they're more geared towards the immigration. So I believe Al would be able to answer those questions, of course. I have one last question. So you shared a lot of resources that the city offers. Now, my understanding is that most of the resources are available, or support is available for the people who are already inside Canada. About a potential investor who is right now outside Canada, but they need to learn about how the industry is performing in like in say in Toronto. Would that support in terms of market research would be available to somebody who is a new immigrant but he's thinking of moving to Canada? Your department would be able to provide them some help, guidance, statistics, or industry overlook.
Absolutely. I think I just mentioned about this agency, Toronto Global.
Yeah,
They do
you did.
this kind of, they do this work only. So they'll be very happy to provide all the information any prospective entrepreneur wants it. And so that's, I think definitely they should connect with them. You can Google it, Toronto Global, and they have specialists from different regions in the world. And also, our economic development and City of Toronto can also be reached out. We have International Alliances program. We also provide that information, and and sometimes connect with Toronto Global if some more support is required. So yeah, yeah. And I think province and feds, all of them, they have some programs for
Absolutely.
this.
Dr. Yadav, thank you very much once again for your time. I know you're very busy. On behalf of Global School of Corporate Excellence, all the participants, I thank you very much that you shared such wonderful resources. You shared some numbers that you don't believe that, this is all belonging to the city that we have been living in for the past several years. Can't thank you enough. Al, I would give the session to you for the remaining part.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Yadav. It was amazing. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and I think I'll continue to listen your presentation if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for the opportunity. It was really wonderful to share some of our information and thoughts with everyone on the call. Thank you.
Okay, so it's big shoes to fill. So are you ready for the next one? I hope so. Perfect. Okay, so my presentation is kind of, I think it was a good segue to understand Toronto, which is, of course, a big component of our great province of Ontario. And I thought it's a good idea if we focus on the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program, specifically the entrepreneur stream. As you are probably aware, we will talk about other OINP options next month, but Today, our focus will be on OINP-ES. And this is our agenda. So we'll have a little bit of introduction and the minimum requirements, the process, and all the issues that you need to follow. The ICN members will receive all these presentations, and because I'm going to use several links, you can also have access to these links. So the first one is the OINP official website. You can click on that link, and it will take you to the entrepreneur stream, and you'll learn more about the entrepreneur stream. Also, the expression of interest and the scoring system is a big part, because when you want to make sure that your client meets the requirements, you need to click on this link and see if they qualify or not. Now, on our website, settler.ca, we have developed a calculator based on the scoring system. You can use that calculator. The calculator is anonymous, as when you fill out the form, no information will be passed to us. You just fill out the form to calculate the points for your clients. And when you reach the end of the pointing system, you can have a screenshot, but if you after that, if you enter your information, we will receive that the calculator outcome. You can stop at that point and just use it. Remember, this is an unofficial calculator, not the official site, but it could make your life a little bit easier. There are some other links in the presentation that as we go, you will see them, but these are probably the number one. And then, since Ayaz already introduced me, I'm not gonna repeat his great introduction, so I'll just pass this one. So now let's take a look at OINP-ES. Why do we have Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program Entrepreneur Stream? Now, I must be honest with you, partly, as Dr. Yadav mentioned, that there are so many people that they want to come to our province and to Toronto. And because of that, Ontario was reluctant to develop an immigration system targeted for the province of Ontario. We already had about 35% to 40% of immigrants initially moving to Ontario, and many of them later migrate from other provinces to Ontario, and they didn't see the need for that. And then they realized that, no, we really need to have an immigration opportunity for people who want to directly immigrate to Canada. Initially, when they developed the entrepreneur stream, it was very complex. You needed actually a signature from a deputy minister in Ontario to be able to immigrate to Ontario. And that was pretty cumbersome for somebody who wanted to immigrate to our province. But then that changed, and especially since major changes to the entrepreneur stream in British Columbia, Ontario kind of mimicked those opportunities and the approach of British Columbia in our province. And now we have a very well-structured immigration option for entrepreneurs to the province of Ontario. And probably it is similar to BC to, let's say, 80%, 85%. You will see many similarities between Ontario and British Columbia. And especially now that we have moved to the online EOI system, the similarities are even more. Now, why do we have an entrepreneur stream option? Of course, these are defined by Ontario government. First of all, the program aim is to facilitate the immigration of entrepreneurial talent to Ontario. Opportunity open doors for international entrepreneurs to establish, invest in, or acquire a business in Ontario. In fact, we've had many of our clients, when they came to Canada, they invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm pretty sure some of your clients have already done that. And that's a contribution to the job market in our province and creating opportunities for Canadians and permanent residents and other of course, businesses in Ontario. That will also helps in economic growth, contributes to Ontario's economy by creating jobs and promoting innovation. And then in terms of eligibility, entrepreneurs, including business owners and senior managers with the intention and ability to manage a business in Ontario. So it's very important that we focus on people who already own businesses outside Canada, or they are senior managers of a business outside Canada, and their intention is to immigrate to Canada. And of course, the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program is an opportunity to directly, after securing a work permit in Canada, to apply for permanent residence, which paves the way for the person to know from the beginning what will be their plan to eventually become permanent residents. That's different from other alternative options for entrepreneurs. For example, when you move under ICT or intercompany transferee, or when you move to Canada under OINP-ES, which both are focused on entrepreneurs. The problem is that later for immigration, you kind of are not sure what would be the best option. Probably the option that you will pick would be immigration under express entry system, but that may not be the best option for many of those applicants. But with the OINP-ES, from the beginning, you know what are the requirements to become a permanent resident, and if you meet those requirements, you can apply to the work permit portion or the stage 1 and eventually become a permanent resident. So I hear some noise in the background. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Sorry about that. So in terms of the number of people who receive the ITAs or invitation to apply, roughly speaking, we'll see less than 100 invitations per year. Now, it depends, of course, and it's very irregular. So they may issue invitations, for example, today, and then for 3 months, they won't invite people, and then suddenly invite 40 people, and then they won't invite people for another 6 months. So you need to have that open discussion with your clients that it is not clear when the invitation will happen and how many people will be invited, and even what would be the lowest score for invitation. Generally speaking, and I will talk about the scoring, we have 200 points to grab. And generally speaking, if your client receives 150 points or more, they are in a very comfortable position. Anywhere between 130 and 150, it depends on the number of invitations that they make. But below 130, it's a very difficult to say that they will be invited. The circumstances in which that we have people invited under 130 points are rare. Now, if you want to take a look at the process of OINP-ES consists of 2 stages. And this is unlike in the past. If you recall, in the past, when you applied under Entrepreneur Stream, you applied directly for permanent resident. Usually there was a good faith deposit. You paid that good faith deposit to the government of the province, and then they issued a letter of support. And with that letter of support, you could apply for permanent residence directly. The problem with that approach was that many applicants, they paid the fees. We didn't have that issue in Ontario because Ontario ES was a very difficult process. But in other provinces, we have people that they posted the good faith deposit, but they never lived in that province, and they ended up living in either Vancouver or Toronto. And the governments of provinces didn't like it, so they moved, pretty much all of them, they moved to 2-stage process. I think the last province that they moved to 2-stage process was the province of New Brunswick during COVID pandemic. They made that change. So in Ontario, it's a 2-stage process. The first stage is to secure a work permit for your clients. So initial preparation is to come up with the business concept, see if it's aligned with your client's circumstances and past experience. You need to make sure that this is something that is wanted by Ontario economy. Usually the way that we handle those cases, we get in touch with, depending on which cities the client is interested to target, we get in touch with the economic development sector of that city, and we present or we pitch the idea that our client has and ask them whether that could contribute to their economy or not. And then that would be the next stage of, or the next step of expression of interest. So make sure that business idea makes sense in the region that you want to invest. Now, we will talk about CMA a little bit more, but generally speaking, we can divide our population areas into three major areas. So those, the big area that we can focus is the Greater Toronto Area and Toronto region, which of course there are millions of people living in this area. Then we have some cities that they have over 100,000 in population, but we also have some regions that they have less than 100,000 in population. An example would be Sarnia, which is, I believe the last time we checked, was about 85,000 people live in Sarnia area. And if you target those regions that they have less number in terms of population, the chances of success for your clients will be higher. The amount that they need to invest is higher. An exception would be if somebody wants to invest in tech industry, then there are some benefits for them in terms of investment. But the best way to approach is to get in touch with the economic development, other than looking into the Statistics Canada reports, Canada Industries statistics reports. Under the NAICS code, you need to extract the NAICS code of your the business sector that you're targeting. We have a statistics available on CIS website, and you can take a look at them as well, and they will really help you to have a better understanding whether this is a good approach for your client or not. But the first-hand information could be obtained from the economic development of that region, asking them questions. After that, the next step is to enter your client in the pool of expression of interest. By entering in the pool of expression of interest, you will show the immigration officers at the provincial level that your client is willing to apply, and they will look into that. There are some elements that they could disqualify the person, and they will be kicked out from the pool. I will talk about them, but if they are considered qualified applicants, they will receive a final number of points, and that point will put them in the competition road with the rest of the population. And that's when at the round of invitation, if they received an invitation to apply, then you need to present documents. They will verify the documents. You need to get in touch with a third-party organization like KPMG or MNP. They will assess your client's assets, and they will generate a report. This section is very important because you have time limitations. So you need to be pretty quick to present all the documents to MNP or to KPMG or whatever third party in the future they introduce. And then after you have the reports and the documents, you present the all the evidence to the province within the time limit that they allot to you. Everything will be done online because you need to access to your one key account. You log in, your client must have their own account, and then you connect your client's account to your account, and then you upload all the files and everything. And then an officer will review those applications, and they will run a mandatory interview. The interview will be done nowadays online, and I don't think we'll have any in-person interviews in the future. It's a lot easier for the officer and for your client. Even if they are outside Canada, they can attend the interview. And after the interview is done, they will send a performance agreement to your client. Now, this is super important to read the content of the performance agreement, to know what are the obligations of your client, and they need to understand those obligations. And then if they are happy with those and they are ready to accept, they will sign the performance agreement. And after signing the performance agreement, they will receive an invitation from the province to apply for a work permit. And that's when you apply for the work permit. Currently, we will apply for the work permits under IMP 60, which I will talk about it a little bit more. But then they will receive normally a 2-year work permit. If they have family, their spouse or common law partner could also receive a work permit. The spouse or common law partner receives a work permit under IMPC 41, and they can work for any employer. Your client must come to Canada, and at that point, stage 2 begins, which under stage 2, your client receives their work permit, they come to Canada, they need to build their business. And by building their business, it means that they need to look at their performance agreement and they need to satisfy that agreement. For example, if they have promised to invest $500,000, they must make that investment. If they have promised to hire 4 people, they must hire them. If one of those people, one of those positions is NOC 0 job, they must hire somebody under NOC 0 job. They must remain in Canada, in Ontario, at least 75% of the time. And they also must manage the day-to-day activities of the business. Whenever they have all of those, that's when you make another report to OINP. By the way, they have a window of 20 months to make this happen. After that, they will get in touch. You will get in touch with OINP, inform them. OINP will investigate, and if they are happy that your client has met all the requirements, they will issue a confirmation of nomination or certificate of nomination. And that confirmation of nomination allows you to apply for permanent residence for your client through the PNP option. You need to log into the PR portal, the representative PR portal, create an account for PNP, and upload all the files, fill out the forms and everything, and submit the application. And then your client can become a permanent resident. From the time that they receive their work permit to the time that they become a permanent resident, it's a must that remains 75% of the time in Ontario, and they also must meet all the requirements on the performance agreement until they become a permanent resident. So that would be the 2 stages. Now, before we move forward, I want to just make a pitch about the ICN, or Immigration Consultants Network. We are here today because of ICN, and majority of people who are here are ICN members. If you are not an ICN member, I encourage you to join us. You basically just look up Immigration Consultants Network by GSCE and you will find it. We have so many private videos about different immigration options in Canada. We will run mentorship sessions for groups. We run private sessions for individuals who are members of that group. We have free monthly CPD sessions that you can receive. We have a forum to ask your questions and your peers have. We have networking sessions for members that they can talk to each other, etc., etc. It's an amazing opportunity for you to grow your business if you are not already a member of ICN. If you're already a member, thank you very much. Okay. Now let's take a look at the minimum requirements for this program. First of all, the viable business requirements. So you must demonstrate a viable business likely to benefit Ontario's economy either locally or as a whole. And as I mentioned, the best way to find out after doing your research through the CIS website, through Statistics Canada, and other reliable sources that you can refer to, then you need to build the business concept and pitch it to the economic development of one of the regions that your client is targeting, and see how they see that, because they have the foot in the ground. They are quite familiar with the needs of their city or their region, and they can see whether this business can actually grow or contribute to the economy. So that's super important. The other issue is that, as I mentioned, the eligibility confirmation is that when you enter the pool of expression of interest and your client receives an ITA, they have only 90 days to provide their documents. So it's very important that from the get-go, you know that your clients have their documents ready, especially because the third-party verification could take time, and it's really nerve-wracking. I can tell you that because they submit the documents, and maybe the third party that will review their documents, they need more documents to verify, for example, your client assets or the client source of assets. And because of that, that could take time going back and forth for the verification and having the report from the third party. So it's a good idea if you have that discussion from the beginning with your client and ask them if they can provide all the necessary documents in a timely fashion. And of course, if you have the past experience of working with those organizations, you have an idea what kind of documents they want, so you can provide them with a list of those documents. I have been working with MNP since 2013. Of course, at that time, majority of my clients, they were heading towards Manitoba and Saskatchewan. But we continued working with the MNP since then. And I have some sort of idea what kind of documents they need. For example, with the properties and the businesses, and of course, their official appraisal of those businesses, financial statements of the business, resume of your client, their bank accounts, the activities of their bank account in the past few years, and of course, the growth of their business and the growth of their properties, because all of those show that why your client has the assets that they have today. So it's important that you have enough documentation, your client presents enough documentation to verify their assets and the sources of their assets. In terms of business experience, your client must have a minimum of 24 months of full-time business experience in the last 60 months. They must be either business owners or senior managers of a business. And business owners must have had an active role. So Ontario is not looking for passive investment, both in your past life and when you come to Canada. So unfortunately or fortunately, we don't have an investors program available in Ontario. In other words, you cannot just buy your way to immigration to Ontario. You need to show that you want to have an active role in your business in Ontario. And an indication of that is that you had an active role in your business in the past. And senior managers must have had senior decision-making responsibilities. So again, just being a member of the board of directors is not good enough. We're looking for somebody who has executive decision-making powers. So we're looking for example, the CFO of the business, the CTO of the business, the CEO of the business, those people that they actually have an effect in the directions that the business make in hiring, firing, budgets, and all those aspects of a typical business. In terms of the net worth, if the person is targeting GTA, their net worth must be at least $800,000. In the current climate of competition, $800,000 is not good enough, but this is the minimum. And if they are targeting outside of Greater Toronto area, then we're looking at $400,000 as the minimum net worth. And as I mentioned, the net worth must be lawfully obtained. And the way that they verify it is through the third party. And then, of course, you have a net worth, but you want to invest it in Canada. This is the personal investment, remember. We're not talking about the loans that they receive from a bank in Canada or other investors that they are investing in that business. This is the investment being made by a single person. So if you have, for example, two people that they want to invest together, each one of them must make a minimum investment of $600,000 if they are targeting Toronto. If they are going outside Toronto, then the minimum investment by each applicant must be at least $200,000. Now, in reality, if somebody is targeting Toronto, if they want to be competitive, the minimum investment must be $2 million. Below $2 million, the chances that you are receive enough points to compete are close to none. And if you are outside Toronto, to be competitive, the minimum investment is better to be at least $400,000. These are the minimums, in my personal opinion. And then, of course, the person who is investing in Canada, they must control at least 1/3 of the equity in the business. So if they may have partners, but those partners collectively cannot have more than 2/3 of the business. And the businesses that are in tech sector, minimum personal investment could be $200,000. So that would be even if they are targeting Toronto area. And as I mentioned, they must do the day-to-day management of the business. And the primary purpose of capital investment should be profit making, not deriving interest, dividends, or capital gains. Again, remember, we want active investment. And in terms of job creation, if you are targeting GTA, then the minimum 2 permanent full-time jobs must be created for Canadians or permanent residents in Canada. And if it's outside, at least 1 person. Again, in reality, the number of job creations must be more to receive enough number of points to compete with the rest of the population. And the jobs must be filled continuously for at least 10 months before submitting the final report. And in other words, that when you come to Canada, you must, your client must create the job as quickly as possible if they want to go through the second stage quickly. Because when they look at that, they want to make sure that the employees have been working for this company for a while. They don't want a person just to hire somebody and they say, oh, I met the requirements, and they apply for their permanent residence. Now, can you purchase an existing business? The answer is yes. It is possible to purchase an existing business. The business doesn't need to be a startup. However, if you want to purchase an existing business, there are some other requirements that you need to keep in mind. For example, the person must visit Ontario for business-related purposes within 12 months from registering interest. Even for those people who want to start a startup in Canada, in Ontario, if they have visited Ontario in the past 12 months, they receive extra points. But for those who want to purchase an existing business, this becomes a mandatory requirement. And business must have been continuously operated by the same owner for the previous 60 months. The reason for that is that they want to make sure that this is not an immigration scheme. In other words, you don't create a business and multiple people purchase it, they secure permanent resident, and they sell it to the next person, and they sell it to the next person. They don't want that. And that's why the business must be in operation for the past 60 months. The complete ownership transfer is required with no shares retained by the previous owners. At least 10% of personal investment should be used for improving or expanding the business in Ontario, and must retain all permanent full-time jobs in the business before and after the ownership. So you cannot simply lay off people after purchasing the business, and the business should not have been previously owned or operated by current or former OINP business stream nominees. Again, as I mentioned, they just put in place several requirements to make sure this is not an immigration scheme. This is an actual reason that you really love that business and you think that you can grow that business and you purchase it. And there is also one more thing that you need to know as an advice. If your client persists to purchase an existing business, ask them to hire a very good business lawyer. And when they sign the agreements with the previous owners, they need to have a good exit strategy. And the reason for that is, what if their immigration falls apart? Then what would be the financial implications of that circumstance? What will happen if they cannot immigrate to Canada for any reason? So they need to have some sort of agreement with the previous owner to make sure that their losses are minimized if the immigration process falls apart. And that's important to discuss that with a business lawyer. And of course, that business lawyer must also be in touch with you as a representative, just to make sure that we also set up everything in such a way that immigration-wise, it's safe and sound. Now, the general business requirements is that the business purpose, it must aim to generate profit through active income from sale of goods or services. In terms of legal compliance, it must adhere to all federal, provincial, municipal, legal, regulatory, and licensing requirements. So, for example, look at the Employment Standards Act in Ontario. We also have another act in Ontario for foreign recruitment. Make sure that you acquaint yourself with those, and your client must be aware of that. And then they also must comply with Ontario's labor and employment standards laws. In terms of permanent operation, the business must operate permanently in Ontario. Project-based and seasonal businesses are ineligible. And we also have a long list of ineligible businesses, depending whether the investment is in GTA or not. And you must double check those lists as well. And the business premises must be in Ontario at all times. And if there are third-party investors, those investors must be Schedule 1, Schedule 2 banks or institutional investors that are qualified. Again, if you go on OINP website, there is a link. You can click on these links and you realize what you mean by Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 banks and what are those investors that are approved by Ontario. And as I mentioned, there is a long list of ineligible businesses. For example, you cannot purchase a laundromat or open a laundromat here in Toronto and get your permanent residence. So you need to look at those as well. Now, in terms of the scores, as I mentioned, there's a scoring system. You can visit that link to find out. But the total score that you could, the maximum score that a person, number of points a person can receive is 200. 80 of those points are related to human capital factors. So it's basically mostly related to this person's past. And about 46 points is related to the investment factors. And we will look into these in the next slide. And then 74% is business concept. That part is mostly decided by the immigration officer. So it's very subjective to the way that the immigration officer looks at it. Now, if you go on on OINP's website, there are some points that are mentioned, that how they evaluate those. But at the end of the day, it's at the discretion of the officer to make those calculations. The other important issue is that if your client receives less than 50% for the business concept, then they unfortunately will be kicked out of the EOI pool. And it's super important for you to run your business concept with economic development of different regions and make sure that this business makes sense before entering them in the pool, because if they are kicked out of the pool, you cannot even file a complaint against that officer. It's very tight to fight for those cases, unless you revise the concept and enter your client back into the pool with a revised concept. Now, in terms of human capital factors, it depends on whether your client is applying as a business owner or they are applying as a senior manager. So the way that they looked at it is that if somebody in the past 5 years, they had 2 to less than 4 years of experience, they received 13 points. If they had less than 60 months of experience, they receive 19 points. If they complete all the 60 months in the past 60 months and or beyond that, they also had business ownership, then they receive 25 points. So they receive maximum points. And the same thing is for business managers. They need to show that they had enough experience as a business manager, senior business manager, to receive enough number of points. In terms of the past specific experience, we have certain activities that they could increase the number of points your clients receive. For example, if they are running a high growth business, what does that mean? It means that their business saw a minimum of 20% revenue increase in 2 consecutive years before EOI registration. So that will give them points. The other one is export trade business. If at least 20% of total goods or services are exported, they receive points. And in terms of transferable skills, if their experience in the past is directly related to what they are doing now, they also receive points. Now, out of these 3 elements, if you have only one of them, your client will receive 15 points. If they have 2 of them, they receive 25 points. If they have all 3 of them, they receive 35 points. In terms of education, if they have post-secondary degree or diploma, which is at least 2 years, they receive 5 points. But if they have 3 years or more of a post-secondary education, they receive 10 points. So as you can see, education doesn't play a huge role, but an educated client can actually receive 10 extra points, which could be crucial for them. In terms of official language ability, when your client enters the pool of expression of interest, they don't really need to show the minimum language requirement. So in other words, if you don't claim any points for their language, if they don't have any IELTS test results or CELPIP results or TEF or TCF results, that's absolutely okay. They can still enter the pool of expression of interest. They just lose points. It doesn't disqualify them. However, when they want to apply for permanent residence, it is mandatory for them to present test results that are equivalent to CLB4 or higher. So it becomes mandatory at the time of PR application. And because it becomes mandatory at the time of PR application, if your client can take the test, please encourage them to take the test because they receive extra points at the time of expression of interest, up to 10 points. So as you can see, the requirements is not that difficult. If they are CLB5 or higher, they receive the full number of points. In terms of investment factors, now we are done with the human capital factors. Let's look at the investment factors. So it depends of, again, if they are targeting GTA or they are not targeting GTA. So if the person is targeting GTA, again, the investment of 2.5 million or more will give them 10 points, the full number of points. Anything between 800,000 to 2.5, sorry, this is not the investment, this is the personal net worth. If their personal net worth is less than 2.5 million, then they receive 5 points. And of course, less than 800,000, they are not eligible. For outside the GTA, or if they are GTA, but they are under the ICT program or digital communication sector, then they could have less net worth and they apply. For if their net worth is less than 1 million, but over 400,000, they receive 10 points. And if it's more than 1 million, they receive 15 points. Also, if you look at this, you see that for GTA, regardless of the net worth of the person, you receive 5 points less comparing to somebody who is targeting outside GTA. Or if they are in the digital communication sector or ICT, then it is okay if they also target GTA. In terms of the actual investment, if the investment is more than $3 million, they receive 20 points if they are targeting GTA. And if it's outside GTA or if it's under ICT sector, then only $800,000 or more gives them full number of points. So as you can see, again, there's a huge edge if they target outside Toronto area and they invest outside the Greater Toronto area for their investment. And then if they have done business-related visits to Ontario, then they receive 6 points. Remember that the visits need to be done in the past 6 months, and they need to have a report. So usually we prepare a table. We show that when they came to Canada, which organizations they visit, what kind of talks they had. They need to collect business cards, pamphlets, they need to take pictures. So they need to show that they actually attended meetings, they talked to different organizations, and they collected information. Sometimes they come, then they attend training sessions by the economic development or other organizations. Maybe an incubator will run a training session for them. They can attend those. So any kind of activities that they have done that shows that they actually visited Ontario for business-related purposes, if they met with potential sellers of businesses, if they hired, for example, a real estate agent to help them with their purchase of an existing business, they also need to include all of those in their future report. And then in terms of business concept factors, as I mentioned, they can receive 74 points, but it's at the hands of the officers to decide how many points they want to assign to them. So you need to keep your fingers crossed that they always say that your client is, their concept is fair or good to receive enough points, because if it's less than fair and less than 50% is assigned, then unfortunately they will lose. So they need at least 37 points to be in the game. And of course, the more they receive, then the more competitive they become. 74 points is a huge number of points. So in terms of the business model, they could receive up to 50 points. In terms of the business location, they could receive up to 10 points. And in terms of job creation, they need to receive 14 points. So only 24 points of these 74 points, they are objective. They are very clear. The other 50 points, it's completely at the hands of the officer. So in terms of the location, business location, if you are targeting a CMA with a population of 175,000 or more, you won't receive any points. So even if your client is investing, for example, in Ottawa, despite not being in GTA, they will lose this 10 points. So again, in terms of the net worth requirements, investment requirements, Ottawa has an edge over GTA. However, they lose when it comes to population. The same thing is true for example, Windsor area, London area, because they have a population of more than 175,000. But if the population is between 100,000 to 175,000, then in that situation, you receive 5 points. So an example would be, for example, St. Catharines. That's one of those areas that you receive 5 points. And then if the population, assuming that St. Catharines has not reached 175,000, I don't know the recent population report. But if the population is less than 100,000, another example that you receive 5 points is Chatham-Kent area. But if the population is less than 100,000, for example, as I mentioned in Sarnia, Northumberland, these are the regions that, if you're targeting Oxford, these are the regions that you could receive less 100 full points. In terms of job creation, again, depends on where you're targeting, but the number of points that you could receive is 3 points if you are hiring at least one person outside GTA or in ICT, digital communication sector, or two, you need to hire a minimum of 2 people in GTA for 3 points. Remember that if your client hires less than these numbers, they will disqualify. If they hire between 3 to 4 jobs, they receive 5 points, 5 or more. And then again, it's also important to know what is the tier category of the jobs, which again could receive extra points. So the maximum number of points that your client could receive is 14 points. Now, we're almost there. Just if you don't want to become a member of ICN, I still offer mentorship and consultation sessions for non-ICN members, although I encourage you to do ICN. These are one-on-one consultation sessions and mentorship sessions. You can ask your questions in those sessions, and I offer assistance. So if you're interested, visit settler.ca and sign up for these mentorship sessions. Now, let's say that you go through the first stage and your client does the interview and everything, and they receive the support letter for the work permit. Then for the work permit, currently we apply under INPC 60. It means that your client, if they need to register a business in Ontario, nowadays, since actually July of 2021, we have an edge in Ontario. Ontario removed the requirements of having a resident member of the board. So it means that 100% of the business could belong to your client who resides outside Canada, and they can register a corporation. I highly recommend registration of corporations, because when you register a corporation, you also receive a CRA business number, which is crucial for the next steps. And then you need to apply under INPC 60. Again, that link up there will lead you to guidelines for INPC 60. But simply put, if you have a CRA business number, you open an account for the business under employer portal. And then under the employer portal, you create a job offer for the applicant, for the principal applicant. And that job offer will be exempt from the requirements of LMIA. And you mentioned that this person has already received an approval from the province and they want to apply for a work permit. And then if for some reason you don't have a CRA business number and you cannot obtain a CRA business number, you need to contact IRCC and request a copy of IMM 5802. This copy is not available online. You need to make that request and they will send you a copy, and then you fill out the form for them, and then you upload the form to the work permit portal when you are applying. Now, if your client is applying from outside Canada, you can use the APR portal to submit the work permit application. If your client is inside Canada, then you need to make sure that they meet the requirements of application from inside Canada. The best approach is to apply online. However, if they are inside Canada and they want to apply and they do not meet the requirements, right now they can, because we have a public policy that even visitors can apply from inside Canada, and that public policy has extended to February of 2025. But in the future, they could also consider flag polling. Having said that, flag polling is a little bit risky because this is a more complicated kind of application, and the officer at the port of entry may refuse to process the application. If your client is targeting health sector, or they are going to work with minors, then they need to do upfront medical exam. And if they are applying at the port of entry, make sure that they do upfront medical exam at least 2 weeks before they go to the port of entry, just to make sure that when they show up at the port of entry, their medical information is available on GCMS records, and the officer at the port of entry will not object to the lack of presence of the medical information. And of course, if they are from outside Canada, from a country, for example, like India, that upfront medical exam is mandatory regardless of the sector they're targeting. They have to do it as well. For the family members of the principal applicant, for the spouse or common law partner, you can apply for an open work permit for them under INPC 41. Oh, by the way, if your clients are from a visa-exempt country, for example, from Germany or from Japan, in those situations, they can apply at the port of entry. Just prepare the port of entry package for them, and they can apply under Section 198 of the regs. But if they are American citizens, you don't even need an ETA. They can just show up at the port of entry. And again, under the authority of Section 198, they can apply at the port of entry. The same thing is true for the spouse or common law partner of the applicant. For children, if they are outside Canada, for minor children who are at the school age, you must apply for a study permit for them. However, the application for a study permit is an open study permit, meaning that you don't need a letter of acceptance because they are exempt under paragraph 219, 2A of the regs. However, they still need to apply for a study permit if they are school-age children. If you are dealing with minor children who are not school-age, for example, they are 3 or 4 years old, depending on their nationality, you can apply for a TRV or ETA. However, make sure to remind your client to ask for a visitor record at the port of entry for their children so they can remain in Canada as long as their parents are inside Canada. If the child is still a dependent child, but they are between the age of 18 and the age of 22, in those situations, if you're applying for study permit, then it is better for them to have a letter of acceptance. That is highly recommended. And on top of that, you can also apply for a work permit for them. And even for minor children, you can apply for a work permit, but regardless of whether you apply for a work permit or not, you still must apply for a study permit for them. But for those children who are not minor children, you can directly apply for a work permit for them under the authority of INP-ES 46. Now, I don't want to go into the details of all of those. I can talk about this for 1 hour. Now, after they enter Canada with the work permit, these are the mandatory requirements that they need to meet before submitting their application for permanent residence. The big one is language proficiency. So they need to achieve at least CLB level 4. Remember, at the time of submitting, their language must be tests must be valid. And then the English tests that are accepted for are IELTS General or CELPIP General. And if they are taking French, it's TEF Canada or TCF Canada. In terms of residency requirements, as I mentioned, 75% of the time they must be in Canada. Actually, from the time that they enter for the work permit up to the time that they become permanent residents. And in terms of the active management, they must manage day-to-day operation of the business. And as I mentioned, they must read the performance agreement and comply with all the requirements of performance agreement, and they must have the approval from the province. When you are ready, when you have the confirmation nomination from the province and you are ready to submit the PR application, you can do it through the representative permanent portal. Remember, this is not the APR portal, it's a separate portal. If you don't have an account, please make sure to create an account. This portal replaces paper-based applications, basically. So you create a new account for your client over there. They will receive an email from IRCC. So it is important that you enter their correct email address there. They need to activate their own access to the portal, but they will only see their own application. They won't system. With your help, you fill out the forms, upload documents, and when you're ready, pay the processing fee and then submit the application. After they receive after you receive the AOR, that's when you can actually link the application to APR portal and continue communications with IRCC through the APR portal. Now, The last topic that I want to cover is that we have an entrepreneur pilot program. This is a program that is initially aimed to invite 100 people to apply. I don't think we have time to continue doing this now, but unless they decide to extend this. But you can do this through Toronto Business Development Center. They basically help the client. It's like some sort of incubation that allows the person to go through this process and eventually be invited to apply for permanent work permit and eventually permanent residence. If you are interested to know more about this, this is provided under this specific page. OINP Entrepreneur Success Initiative. Actually, if you receive, if you're an ICN member, you will receive this slide, and on that slide there is actually a link on this image that you can click and open it. But if you cannot find it, or if you're not an ICN member, just look up OINP Entrepreneur Success Initiative, and then you can actually see all the requirements for this stream and apply through this stream if it's still open to accept, because it was initially introduced in 2021 and maybe they are already have reached the 100 cap. But if they haven't and they accept new applicants, then you can do that. Now we have another CPD session that focuses on OINP for immigration options. So I won't just talk about OINP-ES. In fact, the time that I will spend on OINP-ES in that training session will be extremely limited. My focus is on other options for OINP immigration, the ones that they target in-demand skill jobs, the ones that target employer job offer options, or people who have studied in the province of Ontario. Will try to target that. This training session is approved for 2 CPD hours by CICC. So if you're interested, please sign up. We had a successful session about BCPNP, and I'm going to repeat these for other provinces as well. So on top of Ontario, hopefully we'll have some sessions about other provinces as well. But when it comes to Ontario, it's so near and dear to me. Believe it or not, what the image that you see is my view here. So I can literally, right now I see the City Hall from my office. So I will put more efforts in delivering the OINP section. For our future CPD sessions, please visit gsce.ca/CPD and Global School Corporate Excellence.ca/CPD. If you visit that website, you will see the CPD sessions, and you can sign up to these CPD sessions. For our ICN members, all the CPD sessions that are not considered short courses, those CPD sessions are free. And for non-ICN members, sometimes we have free CPD sessions, but most of them are paid, and you need to pay for the session. But they are approved by CICC. And if you are a member of the Law Society, most of my sessions are also accepted by the Law Society. Sometimes we even receive direct pre-approval by different law societies about our CPD sessions as well. If you have any questions related to these courses, you can get in touch with Ayaz at gsce.ca, or call him. And also visit settler.ca for news and articles about immigration to Canada. So we are already 2 hours, but I think we have some questions. So what if, Ayaz, is it okay if we spend maybe 5-10 minutes to answer some of those questions?
That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, so let's see. Let me take a look at some of the questions, and I try to answer those questions that are as relevant as possible to our topic. So just bear with me for another probably 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then we're done. So let's say the candidate is already operating a business in Ontario under OWP. Would they still be eligible to apply? So generally speaking, they're looking for a new startup to approve that. And as I mentioned, if there is an existing business, if you're purchasing an existing business, there will be that the requirement is that this business has been in operation for the past 60 months and you're purchasing it from an existing operator. Having said that, if the business has been created by the by your client and they want to apply, and I must be honest, I haven't had any cases of this nature, but you need to get in touch with Ontario, and the email address is posted on their website, but it's I can post it in the chat section. But it's very easy. It's business.immigration@ontario.ca. So you can get in touch with them, explain the situation to them, and ask them if they approve this and allow that to proceed. So how do you assess the eligibility for a client of OINP-ES, specifically with respect to net worth assessment? A lot of clients will not have as much cash to show. Do the properties and other assets count? Yes, that's a very good question. So we look at the net worth of the person. So when we say net worth of the person, it means everything that they have minus everything that they owe. So that's the simplest way to approach it. So, and then if they have properties, bank accounts, stock shares, investment in other businesses, their own business, if they own a business, all of those, they need to be appraised properly by the officials. And in each country, the process is completely different, but we need to have the appraisals of all those in the local currency. And even if they have investment outside Canada, we also need those as well. And then when you have all of those, and then you have the loans and mortgages and everything, then you deduct them, and then you convert that to Canadian currency, and you find out what is their net worth in Canada. It's a doable process. We usually share with them the Schedule 4A form, which is standard form by IRCC about the calculation of net worth. And with the help of that form, we put together and calculate their net worth. We also have an internal spreadsheet in our company that we sometimes use that spreadsheet because it helps us just easily add those evaluations and make a calculation and find out whether their net worth meets the requirements or not. We don't really need cash. Of course, it's okay if they have money in their bank accounts. That's actually amazing. But we want just to see that they have enough net worth, not cash, net worth. Okay. And in terms of what questions we ask, again, we ask about their properties, their bank accounts, their investments. If sometimes they have an insurance policy that give them money, all of those. So where can we find the score calculator? It's the calculator. So other than us, I don't think anybody has created a calculator. So the calculator is actually on settler.ca website. If you just go on settler.ca and search for OINP-ES calculator, you can find it. And I can actually...
I have also posted a link in the chat box.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks very much. So in case of the client is outside of Canada, can we register the business on their behalf? Yes, we can. As I mentioned, since July of 2021, Ontario allows 100% ownership from outside Canada. So we can actually do that. In the light of the federal SUV program, which rewards efforts compared to OAS, etc., why is OAS relevant? Plus 5 families can come under one application. There are so many differences between these two, and I think OINP-ES is very well structured. The other problem with SUV is that there are many schemes, questionable schemes that we can think of, and they put people into trouble. We have many refusals, and also Some people, they don't really want to spend $150,000 on legal fees, etc., or incubator fees to apply on their SUV. And honestly, these are two different options, completely two different options. I cannot say for sure which one is better than the other one. We need to have that discussion with our client and see which one they prefer. And if they prefer SUV, then why not SUV? No. You cannot say why there is an option when there's another option. Sometimes people come to Canada and they come under one of these programs and they claim refugee status in Canada. So for some reason, I don't know, and then cannot say for sure why people do what they do. It's just that we present to them that their options and they select which one is better. Remember, today's session is not to pitch OINP-ES to you, is to show that this option exists and its requirements. Now, it depends on your discussions with your client to pick one option. So is it possible to have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation after this session? As I mentioned earlier, all the ICN members will definitely receive this PowerPoint presentation as well. I don't know whether the other people will receive that or not. That's Ayaz's call. Can you give some examples of businesses that government go invitations from OINP? So I think anything related to expansion of our economy could be amazing. So if you look at, for example, Dr. Yadav's presentation, he mentioned that operating a theater in Ontario is now one of the fastest growing businesses. So you need to look at the statistics and look at what is really happening. I mean, if you are targeting, for example, an area, a region that, for example, they don't have a Capitol Theater or they don't have a cinema, and your client has the past experience in that sector and they really want to operate a theater over there, and they bring, I don't know, different performance to that area. Just imagine how much excitement that can create in that region, and how many businesses around that theater will benefit from that, how many job creations, temporary and permanent, create. So you need to look at, there is no specific sector. You need to look at the potential for growth in a specific region. Again, remember, specific region. An investment that in Toronto doesn't make sense could make 100% sense in Windsor. So you need to look at that region, and that's why I'm saying we always negotiate and ask for advice from the economic development of that sector, and they will tell us that whether this makes sense or not. I had a prospect a few years back. Their investment was so significant that the government of Ontario got excited about their investment, and they tweeted about their investment. So it depends on what you are targeting and what your client's past experience is. So I answered one more question. Unfortunately, we cannot go beyond that. But if you attend our OINP session, hold on to your questions and you can ask them. If you're an ICN member, you can bring your questions to our forum or to our Q&A session will happen on Thursday, which happens to be tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday. Oh my God. And ask your questions over there. So considering the complexity of this program, what would be the reason to take the BI clients to this program, not the others? Again, you present to them and you ask them. I mean, and remember, this is not a main road for immigration. As I mentioned, the number of invitations that are being issued every year is less than 100. So we're not talking about, think about 500,000 people who immigrate to Canada, and only if you add their family members, less than 400 or 500 people under this program immigrate to Canada. So it's less than 1,000th of the immigrants that they immigrate to Canada. It's not a mainstream immigration option. You explain this to the client, and if the client is willing to take it, then they will take it, because sometimes you explain this to your client and they say, oh, I have this business idea. And I have run this successfully in my home country, and I want to expand it here in Canada. And I think this suits me. So if it suits them, then why not? If they're not willing to take this and they prefer to do startup visa, or they want to do IMPC11 or ICT, and that suits them better, then by all means, let's do that one. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this session. We have already passed 11 minutes of our allotted time, so I don't want to keep you more. Ayaz, if you could please stop recording. Again, thank you. My special thanks to Dr. Yadav. You made